quick about, you know, you, well, first of all, you're kind of the youngster now in Little Feat.
I was just talking to the guys the other day about this. I've always been, so far, the young guy in the band. I don't know when that's going to change, but it hasn't changed yet. When I was 16, when I was 16, I was on the road with, guys who were, 20, 30 years older than me, and that hasn't changed.
So, let's talk about the Allman Brothers Band because coming into Little Feat, as a friend of mine once said, who in another band that's been around for a long, long time, the train's rolling and has been rolling for a while. So you came into the Allman Brothers Band at a time also when, I mean, that train had been going for a long time already.
Yeah, and I
How,
mean it's the Greg Allman band. I mean the guitar players in the Allman Brothers band are Warren Haynes and Derek Trucks, but I was in the solo band that Greg had, which of course, we did record 2 albums. I was with him from 2008 until he passed away in 2017, and we recorded Back to Making Alive and Southern Blood. And that last record, I wrote a couple songs on it. It was nominated for some Grammys and Americana. So we had a nice ending run with Greg.
Nice. I also want to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk today because I know you're getting ready to leave the hotel and head out on the road. What's it like traveling in the bubble tour?
Well, I mean, it's better than not playing music.
For sure.
Last night we had a little sort of like spontaneous hang in my room with a couple of the guys, and we're trying to figure out how to do it. Hanging on the bus, hanging backstage at the venue, because this is definitely an organization of friends, and
Right.
there's a lot of friendship and camaraderie. So we have that. And there's nobody who's, I'm in no hurry to have to go be in a bar and get away from anybody. I mean, I'm really having a great time. So it hasn't really, I think if anything, maybe it's made things even closer because we're not able to go off and do our own thing. So it's like, we're just really enjoying the time we get to spend together, hanging out, playing music.
So, one of the things that to me that's been the coolest thing about Little Feat is no matter which chapter it is, there is new music to be had and new music to be made. It's not just a cover band. Little Feat has never been a cover band. Coming into that environment and as a songwriter, do you foresee new music coming out of Little Feat? I know I talked to Bill Payne a couple weeks ago, and it seems like there is going to be some new music.
I mean, the answer to that is there already is a bunch of new music. The band is full of singer songwriters.
Right.
Sam Clayton just showed me a bunch of songs that he's written. Fred Tacken and I have already pretty much finished writing a song. Bill and I are going to start writing together soon. I've got about 6 or 7 tunes that I've written for the band.
Wow.
We'll see what makes it through the gauntlet.
Right.
Next year we've got a lot of work to do supporting the repertoire, and of course in rock and roll now it's all rock and roll, doesn't matter who you're talking about, has gone to the realm of repertoire, which is very similar to what happened to classical music, in the early part of the 20th century, and then eventually jazz in the 1980s. When you saw it go, eventually the baton got handed to Wynton Marsalis and jazz at Lincoln Center. So repertoire has become the tip of the spear in rock and roll. So we're really focusing on that for now. And honestly, we're out here, the By Request tour. We were really excited to get these great requests, and we're strengthening the back catalog because there are songs we're playing that have never been played since the 70s or since Lowell George was
Right.
born, or at all. I mean, there's a song called Perfect Imperfection from the Down on the Farm record that I don't know. We can't find a live version of it, and the guys can't remember ever playing it live. So we're playing that on this tour regularly. So there's a deep catalog of about 60, 70 tunes that we've been looking at. And out of that bunch, there's quite a few songs that have never been performed live.
That so for me as a fan, I mean I'm kind of like you. Little Feat is my favorite band, and the fact that I had a 30+ year friendship with Paul Barrere still just kind of boggles my mind how that all happened and to be associated with the band in that way. So let's talk a little bit about the Request tour, which just opened over the weekend, right, at the Capitol Theater, and I've seen some of the videos, and I mean the energy on stage is just off the charts.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things going on there. The first thing is, we have just the joy of playing music with Sam Clayton, Kenny Gradney, Fred Tackett, and Bill Payne. And these guys are playing the best of their lives, which would seem almost counterintuitive if you look at how great they've always been. You would think, well, they
Right.
must be slowing down. They're not anywhere near close to slowing down. Every night, these guys play things that blow my mind. Um,
Wow.
and then my old friend Tony Leone is now on drums, and a band is only as good as its drummer. And Richie Hayward is one of my top 5 favorite drummers in recorded music history. How do you step into that role? Well, there's no replacing Richie or Paul or Lil George. It's absolutely never going to happen on any
Right.
level. So what you do is you think about the way Yo-Yo Ma plays a Bach cello suite, or you think about the way Glenn Gould plays Bach, or you think about the way Wynton Marsalis interprets Duke Ellington music, or that's or the way Branford Marsalis plays the music of John Coltrane. And that's how Tony Leone and I have approached this gig, with that level of reverence and interpretation. So it's a
Right.
challenge of playing, especially I love the classical analogy for rock and roll right now, because the composer has to be honored, and the notes are the notes.
Right.
But
Right.
then that twist you put on your emphasis or tone, you can put twists on the music to give it your own small signature. And of course, we already mentioned Warren Haynes and Derek Trucks. I mean, look what they did with the Allman Brothers catalog. It's
Right.
phenomenal. The balance, or my friend John Harrington and Steely Dan. I'm very inspired by these guys. Over the years with Greg Allman, I went through the same gauntlet of, having to think about everyone from Dwayne Allman to Jack Pearson, so
Right.
for me, it's something, a hat trick I've had to pull off more than once.
And it's great that you use that classical music analogy, because I've heard that a lot, and it really resonated with me as far as bands that are changing members and things, because that really is what it is. And not to put Little Feat on the same pedestal as a Mozart or Tchaikovsky or anything, but in that realm, you're absolutely right. It is that representation and honoring that composer. So it almost is like a classical endeavor.
I mean, they rock and roll, but any of the rock and roll bands. I mean, I suppose you could put like the Beatles on the level of Mozart. I would compare Little Feat more to, like, if you want to continue that line of thought, to like Debussy or maybe even Stravinsky, because their influence is very predominant across a number of genres, and they are a musician's rock band. You know, so there's a virtuosity and sophistication, but there's also this grounded element in the songwriting, and that's the ultimate hat trick in music, especially these days. Is like, do you have a song? And with this band, I mean, their back catalog is an embarrassment of riches. I mean, the songs are so good.
Yeah.
Every song is great, and then when you do a jam on top of that, it's a cherry on top at that point. But those songs, I mean, no one's writing songs like this anymore. That's why it's moved into the realm of repertoire.
And also, like you say that, and I see that with each chapter of Little Feat, that the songwriting continues to get better as the years have gone on, and as each chapter seems to unfold, the songwriting and like you said, even the playing seems to get better. So I'm excited to see what you guys bring in this chapter.
Yeah, we'll see. It's
How
going to be
so?
like it'll be that balance of the old and new, and I think you're going to see a lot with the Waiting for Columbus tour next spring that we announced. We're going to be doing that all year, playing that great live album front to back. Meanwhile, in the background, we're all going to be conspiring to try to come up with a new record and hopefully find a producer who's suitable,
Right.
and try to do, that'll be going on in the background as we kind of re-cement and reacquaint the fans and ourselves with this incredible book.
Right. And so let's talk about the request tour, which is kind of I mean, I would say that's almost like a warm up, but at the same time, you're really kind of getting to explore, like you said, the catalog. So how did the requests come in, and how far in advance are you getting the requests, or are you taking requests at the show?
We're not taking requests at the show, and I think that the chance to submit requests may have been closed already. I haven't seen any new ones come through, but We had, I think, the final list about 2 weeks ago. We rehearsed for a week, but the thing is, um, I would not describe what we're doing as a warm up. Just like everything with Little Feat, I would say we really dove in the deep end right away with a huge amount of songs and a lot of challenges. And we've all been working our tails off to make each one of these shows a unique experience for the fans and for us.
Right.
And that's the beauty of a band like this too, with this level of musicianship, is that the process of discovery in real time is as important as the disciplined interpretation of the arrangement. So there's always a tightrope walk, which you're not going to see with most rock bands you go see. They may not play the same show every night, but they have every song goes like this. And with Little Feat, there's always opportunities for there's some that are well arranged, and there's some that could go in any direction.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that Little Feat is kind of the musicians band, and I would imagine that was one of the reasons that you ended up here, because you are one of those guys who is a musicians. You don't have an ego, you don't have an attitude. You're there for the music, and you're there to play with your comrades, and that is so evident on stage, even in the early clips that I've seen from those first couple shows. And that was always one of the things that has been endearing about Little Feat, is that just the joy that you guys all have on stage, and it's, you can see that, and the audience definitely feels that.
I've never had this much fun playing music in my life. And even playing with Levon Helm and Greg Allman, particularly with Greg, because it was just such a almost decade long journey, being his band leader and writing music together and living together. And he became a really close friend and mentor and ally of mine. And I still think about him every day. Making music with Greg Allman was extremely deep. It was like, on a good day, I was trying to be Quincy Jones to his Sinatra, is what I say.
Wow.
But he was an extremely incredible person, incredible personality, and the voice was our North Star in the Greg Allman band. And we would support that voice every night, and I would watch him shrink an audience down to, a private concert with that voice. This is a very different experience with Little Feat, not only because I'm a band member, so it's 6 people, working together to make decisions and to collaborate, but also the catalog and the style of the music is just exactly what I love.
And diverse. I mean, that's one of the things about Little Feat. I mean, you have jazz, you've got swamp, you've got hard edge rock, you have all these different melding pieces in different songs, and some of them within the same song. So that must be challenging, but extremely gratifying for you as well.
Yeah, and I mean, and with the singing and the guitar playing, I mean, Lil George was my biggest inspiration as a kid, because I was this overweight white middle class kid in the Midwest who was searching for an identity. And I certainly was never going to become the alien talent, once in many generation talent of Jimi Hendrix or Chuck Berry. But when I heard the music of Little Feat and I eventually saw pictures of Lil George, I said, wait a second, maybe this is something that I might be able to do with my life. And ironically, the guitar I even have out here I'm touring with was I had a yard sale, sold my Nintendo video game system when I was 12. And I was living in Pennsylvania at the time. I went to 8th Street Music in Philly and bought a new Strat Plus with the money, which my parents made up the difference. And I've got that Strat Plus out on the road now. I actually bought it because it was the model that Warren Haynes, Paul Barrett, Fred Tackett, and Eric Clapton were playing that year when I saw them on tour. It was the same guitar.
Wow.
So I brought it out here, and I put a Stratoblaster system in it, one of these back pickups that's like Lowell's, and I started playing slide literally with a Craftsman socket on my pinky in open A and open G tuning. And then when I moved to New York City when I was 19, I went to standard tuning because I lived in a 5-floor walk-up and I didn't want to take 3 guitars everywhere. So when I came back to this gig, it was literally going back to learning slide for the first time, and the way I played slide from the age of 12 till 18. And I got to literally go back to sort of the Rosetta Stone of where I learned intonation with a slide, and how I learned to sing and vocalize, because I learned by imitating Lowell and Steve Winwood and Greg Allman and Mike McDonald, and then eventually they led me to Ray Charles and Sam Cooke and Otis Redding and Donny Hathaway and Stevie Wonder, and that's kind of where. But see, so as a vocalist and as a guitarist, Little Feat actually really helped me set sail on my whole musical journey, which has kind of gone all over the place.
Wow.
But the way they blended styles is how I actually started playing music.
Wow. So when you have a show like the opening at the Capitol Theater and the upcoming tour, how do you, after a show like that, I mean, you must be so, how do you wind down after something like that? How do you go to sleep after something like that? I mean, if it was me, I would be up for like 2 days after that.
Well, I used to drink a bottle of wine after the gig. Not such a sustainable thing at the age of 44. So what I do, to answer your question, what I do now is I have a pretty consistent regime of lifestyle that I live, where I do Tai Chi, running, intermittent fasting, vocal exercises.
Okay.
So, and basically, if you live healthy and you eat clean and you keep your mind on the right track, once you get to the end of the gig, it's kind of like getting to the end of a workout. And my wind down is honestly, I just drink some carbonated water and go to bed. I mean,
Oh, okay.
or some tea. I know it's not very rock and roll, but I want to hit a full voice high B every night.
Right.
I want to be Lil George on his best day at every show in terms of when I'm singing his stuff. I'm a fan in the audience as well, and I want to give them what I would want to see, and that becomes the most important thing.
I think that is huge for us. And like I said, I'm going to see you guys in Nashville in March, and then in New Orleans later that week. So
You picked the good ones.
oh, I can't even wait. I mean, again, I've probably seen Little Feat more than any other band ever. And when I met Paul, there was no Little Feat. I met him in 1986 and had him up to my radio show down in LA. And unbeknownst to me, at the end of the interview, he says, "Oh, by the way, Little Feat got back together, and we have an album coming out in 6 months."
Yeah,
which was the Let It Roll album. So really looking forward to see where the next chapter goes. Let me ask you one more question. You mentioned the Beatles. Do you have a favorite Beatles album?
Oh man, that's a hard question. I mean, you kind of have to know all of them. I tend to like the sort of, well, I mean, I guess it would be Sergeant Pepper's if you kind of like twisted my arm. But then the other side of the coin is there are just these, like my favorite Beatles song, if you again twisted my arm, would be Something. That's I'm kind of a Harrison guy, in terms of like his writing. I really love his writing style. But I mean, if you don't know their music, you can't really play music. I mean, it doesn't even matter what you play. I mean, it's they are the Beethoven of our time. It's mandatory. It's just and it's and the songs. I mean, those songs are built like tanks. I mean, you can't even ruin those songs. I mean, you hear people play those. You know what I mean? You hear people play those songs at a bar, and they still touch you, even if it's just somebody playing the wrong changes or chord voicings. They're perfect songs. And again, I believe that that's particularly in rock and roll, but any form of composition is really the most important tenet. The way we play music these days, I think a lot of people have a problem with genres. It's like with Greg Allman, the first record that he did when I joined him, they called a blues record. And then the last record was called an Americana record. And now with Little Feat, it's like, is it a jam band? I go through this with my own band too, over the years. As what is it? Is it blues? Is it Americana? Is it jam? Well, it's called rock and roll. And though you don't have that category anymore, rock and roll used to mean, everything from Little Richard to Little Feat.
Right.
Is rock and roll. And the thing is that, there's as much jazz and bluegrass and Delta blues, and soul music in Little Richard as there is in Little Feat. It's a salon of American roots music. And now I don't know if you've seen, but they've changed the Americana category to American roots. So I think they're like working their way back to rock and roll.
I didn't realize that.
Well, they changed it. Check this out. They changed it to American roots. And then my favorite artist around right now is Brandi Carlile. I think she's brilliant. And they took her new song when it was nominated for a Grammy. They took it out of American roots and they put it in pop. So I don't know how to chase this whole thing down with the industry, because it's like, what, as soon as an American roots song becomes popular, it leaves the genre. I don't even know how to
So let me ask you then, in the couple of shows that you guys have done so far, so one of the things I did some interviews a couple of weeks ago for a James Harmon tribute, and we were talking to some of the younger blues artists, and the thing that came to light was that there are younger artists out there that are playing blues and such, but the folks that are coming to see them are still like the people that are my age, and they're not the 20-something and the 30-somethings. Are you seeing younger folks in the Little Feat audience, or is it still the folks like me that have been listening to Little Feat for the last 40 years?
Well, it's mostly fans in a older age demographic, as it were. Just like when you go see the symphony or jazz at Lincoln Center, and it kind of goes back to Exhibit A of our conversation. You're going to see a lot more education in rock and roll. You're going to see it institutionalized more and more every year. During the pandemic, I and many other musicians turned to teaching on Zoom, or I teach for True Fire. True Fire is a great online educational program. I teach guitar courses for them. And then I was teaching singing, songwriting, and guitar during the pandemic, and I did very well. I mean, I didn't really need to gig in 2020. I was able to support my family working 15, 20 hours a week from my office doing that. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I mean, it's no longer a counterculture art form. It's actually it's very much part of the firmament of America. And I think the more that we embrace rock and roll as part of and blues and all these other ancillary soul music, all these other ancillary sort of like mashup genres, once we equate it more with jazz, especially because jazz, of course, is music that is American music. I think they should all be under the same tent of American roots music, to be honest, because I think they all interlock.
Yeah, I would agree 100%.
That's what you'll see more of, and you'll see it because the money, because you can't sell a record anymore to make money. You have to look for other opportunities on the commerce side with the art to make it grow. And I think that you're really going to see it in education, what we do. And being out here with a band like Little Feat, I think of it as like, would Duke Ellington have stopped after Johnny Hodges, his most famous solos, died? No, he got another alto player and they kept going,
Right. Yeah. I think that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Well, I know you got to get going, Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk. I really do appreciate it. Can't wait to see you. I hope the bubble's off when I get to see you guys so we could shake hands.
It looks like things are heading that way. Let's cross our fingers. But I tell you, I encourage anyone to come out. We're going to give you a heck of a show, man. We've been working real hard. It's just going to get better.
I know that for sure. Thank you again for coming in.
All right, buddy. You have a great day, okay?
All right, you too. Be safe.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. So Scott Sharrard of Little Feat. Oh, that was a lot of fun. I'm going to leave you now with a quick Feat song, and then we'll come back and we'll take care of some business on 92.7 KOCF Fern Ridge Community Radio.